All right, so while everyone fills that out, I'm going to share a little bit of an overview. So the National Operations Center of Excellence offers a variety of resources to support the transportation systems management and operations community. You can go to NOCO's website at transportationops.org, and I'll put that link in the chat in a minute, to browse through links for TSMO resources and news. Previous webinar recordings and case studies can be accessed from the NOCO resources page also. So a few logistics for today's webinar. We are recording this webinar. The recording will be made available on NOCO's website, so that's transportationops.org. All the attendees are encouraged to stay engaged by using the Q&A feature for questions and the chat feature for comments. So I see some of you putting in your name and organization. That sounds great in the chat. You can access the Q&A and the chat pod either on the bottom or top of your screen, depending on your Zoom program orientation. We will have time for a question and answer session at the end of the presentations. So if you have any questions, feel free to enter those into the Q&A area as they come to mind throughout the presentations. We'll have some moderated time at the end to answer those. And then, like I mentioned, feel free to enter your name and agency in the chat to say hello to your peers. All right, I'm going to leave the poll open for another minute. It looks like we still have some answers trickling in. And then I'll just do a quick preview of the agenda as we have people wrap that up. So thanks again for joining us. Today we will have a TMC pooled fund study overview. We'll talk a little bit about challenges with managing TMC operator performance, and then hear a variety of agency practices and lessons learned. So we'll hear from Iowa DOT, Louisiana DOTD, and Wisconsin DOT. And then, like I mentioned, we'll have some time for Q&A and chat a little bit about how to stay connected with some of the NOCO resources. So I'm going to end the poll here. Looks like we've got 82% of people participated, so that's pretty good. Thanks, everyone. So excited to see kind of the range of folks we have joining us today. Thanks again for being here. And then I'll hand it off to our moderator, Rashad Rice. He is a division chief of TMC operations with the Office of Transportation, Mobility, and Operations with the Maryland State Highway Administration. Rashad is moderating today's session and will also be providing an overview of the TMC Pooled Fund Study, which is co-sponsoring today's webinar. All right, thanks, Rashad.
How's everybody doing today? My name is Rashad Rice. First, we have to start off with this disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are presenters and do not necessarily reflect those of FHWA or the U.S. Department of Transportation. The contents do not necessarily reflect the official policy of the U.S. DOT. We can go through the rest on your own. I don't need to go through all of that. We can move on to our learning objectives that we have today. Those will be to share information on current practices associated with quantifying, assessing, and reviewing the performance of TMC operators. We want to look to understand existing challenges in doing so. We also want to hear about lessons learned from other agencies about doing that. What is the TMC Pooled Fund Study? It is a group of 25 public agencies and organizations who voluntarily pool funds each year to address key challenges and issues they're facing in support of improving performance, capabilities, and how they manage and operate their TMSs. Who can join the pool fund study? We have any commercial agency or organization responsible for using a TMS, state departments, cities, county agencies, metro planning organizations. And as you can see, we have our goals there. If you wanted to find any more out, you can go to that website and learn more there. Our value proposition at the Pool Fund Study, we're looking to enable agencies to interact with other TMC managers and others involved in TMC operations that are experiencing similar issues, technical or otherwise. And it provides an opportunity to collectively identify issues, provide insights into projects, and to help shape resources that the TMC Pool Fund Study is developing. For more information, or if you're looking on joining, you can contact our liaison, John Obenberger, at his website, at his email address there. We have currently 10 projects going on that are Pool Fund Study funded. You can go through the list there, but we have a couple on sharing and using different types of data in TMSs, methods to identify staffing needs and developing or updating staffing plans for TMSs. You can go through the list at your leisure. We also have some pooled fund study supported projects, some from the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, or NCHRP. If you could advance the next one, please. Project 03148, we have NCHRP Project 03151, data subsystems with data management plans, and integrating use of new software subsystems and software within the TMSs. Next, please. We can go to NOCO's portal. It serves as basically a one-stop shop for agencies to access and share information on TMS-related issues. Everyone here should use this site as the first place to look for information and share lessons learned on or their resources. And you have the link at the bottom that you can follow. Our emerging topics webinar series. This is a list of what are co-sponsored webinars currently, obviously today, April 16th, and then we have all the way through the end of 2025. These webinars happen every other month on several emerging topics that pertain to TMSs. As you can see, there's a dedicated page for NOCO site for emerging topics as well. For more information on past, current, and future emerging topics, you can follow the link shown here. Presenting first is Les Jacobson. Les is the principal at LNJ Transportation Consulting, and he will be providing an overview about the challenges faced and why this is such an important emerging topic. Les?
Thank you, Rashad. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about how we can improve TMS performance overall, but specifically through looking at the performance of TMS operators. And it's important to note that this is not assessing performance in order to be vindictive in any way or anything else. It's to provide positive feedback primarily to the operators so that they can see how they can improve performance. And so the managers, the TMS, can see how they can improve their TMS's performance. Some of the benefits, of course, of improving TMS performance are on the screen. I'll just mention a couple. Certainly to improve roadway safety. That includes reduced severity and number of crashes, and also to reduce traffic congestion. But all of these are important. Next slide, please. So again, it's important to assess operator performance, as I mentioned before, in order to improve the overall performance of your TMS. Some other things, though, are it enhances staff morale. It's very important that anyone has their direct supervisor tell them how they're doing, have a conversation about what's going well and what's not. It also improves culture. It improves staff retention. And there are several other things here. I'm not going to go through a list of all of those, but I would say it also helps to identify the capabilities that staff need to develop overall. Next slide, please. So you'll see this is essential process diagram several times in this, and if you were at the last at the December webinar that dealt with determining staff levels, you will have seen this as well. This is essentially a process of how to determine staffing needs overall, staffing approach, and it really ends in how to implement and monitor and evaluate those staff. Next slide, please. So there are several opportunities to assess and improve TMS performance, uh, TMS operator performance. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these. We don't have enough time, but please, when you get these slides, take a look at this more. But a couple that I'll mention. It's really important because or it provides opportunities to build and maintain support for the TMS staff, support resources and improvements. If we see how well the TMS is operating and the operators are performing, that helps us identify where perhaps additional resources are needed and what kind of improvements need to be made, and then also helps to prioritize those improvements. It can also help to adjust job classification and position descriptions, and also help to address workload estimates and schedules, and also your approach to staffing. Next slide, please. So the first step in this overall process is to assess and prepare and then engage with staff and with stakeholders. It's really important, especially when we think about assessing TMS operator performance. It's really important in this step to confirm what the TMS scope is, what the performance objectives are, and what the goals are, because that'll be the basis for how we want to monitor and then assess performance overall. It also helps to identify the TMS functions, services, and actions. All of this together helps to put the right context into what the TMS operators are doing, and making sure that all of the staffing needs and all of the assignments that are going on are in line with what the overall TMS performance objectives and goals are. Next slide, please. So some of the key things to look at is, as we mentioned, identifying TMS functions. Those are things like to detect and verify incidents. Actions include things like confirming incidents, and then services are generally go to outside of the TMS to share information for specific events or incidents, things like that. Next slide, please. So some of the factors that might affect the operator performance include what's the demand? During adverse weather or planned special events, there's much higher operational demand. We need to keep that in mind when we look at the different performance measures for staff during those times. Also, what are the job roles and responsibilities? What are their knowledge, skills, and abilities? It's also important to think about the operational policies and procedures, and to make sure that the operators are aware of what those are. Next slide, please. So the next two steps in this process are about defining the operator performance measures, and particularly important in here is to define staff performance that are aligned with the TMS operational performance measures, and also to collect data. I'll go into each of those in more detail in the next slides. Next slide, please. So identifying measures to support assessing staff performance. It's important to select those measures to make sure they're linked to TMS goals and performance measures, as I've mentioned a couple of times. Also, to connect the measures and data to your position descriptions. We want to link with requirements and performance measures for the TMS functions. We also want to verify that the measures and the data to be collected can be collected, and make sure that the methodologies are correct. And then we want to identify the data that needs to be collected so that we can do a good job of assessing performance of the operators. Next slide, please. So some of the things that we would want to measure, generally it focuses on things like making sure that each of the subsystems used in the TMS and what they are during normal and emergency situations, things like CMS or closed circuit TV. Also that there's proper activation so that they're activating on time and they're updating on time and that they are complete as they do that and accurate. Finally, it's really important to document all of that. And on the right side, it has a few of those types of things that are related to CMS usage. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So there's also, that's kind of the performance in terms of, do we have the capabilities to do the work? Is everybody got the KSAs and things like this? Operator productivity is more about, is the workload, is the workload and the staffing kind of in sync so that we see how many things like how many activations or updates there can be during a shift. And again, it needs to align with the operational performance measures. And it's really important to take into consideration the variance in activity levels across shifts. Is it during the peak period times or is it overnight? Productivity would be expected to be different. And it's important to assess productivity during critical conditions as well as normal conditions. And that's really important because the people who are doing it all want to do a good job. And if there's just not enough staff or if they're not trained well enough, we want to be able to identify that so that measures can be taken to improve that. Next slide, please. So this last step in this process is probably the one that you might most think of when we think about evaluating performance, because this is where the actual performance assessment occurs. So it develops and implements the monitoring approach. What am I going to do in my TMC to monitor operator performance? What kind of reporting mechanisms do we want to have? And also, how do we incorporate those results into day-to-day management? And I'll go through especially that last one in a little bit more detail. Next slide, please. So when you want to put together your monitoring approach, it's important to look at the performance, the key action for operators to develop and implement a comprehensive performance monitoring approach. That includes real-time oversight, monitoring and reporting operator performance, and then also post-shift reviews. And I've got a slide on each one of those that I'll go through. Next slide, please. So real-time oversight, that's just taking a look at what's happening on the floor as the shift progresses. It looks at what each operator is doing, at least at some level. Next slide, please. And then it's important to review how they've been doing to be able to report on that performance and to have established targets so that you can measure performance against those targets. Next slide, please. So here are some of the examples that may have targets. So for example, if you have safety service patrol, you might want to make sure that from the time that they're aware that the safety service patrol needs to go out there to the time that they're dispatched, in less than 2 minutes. You might have a target time for posting CMS messages or updates, things like that. Next slide, please. And then post-shift reviews. Sometimes you call them debriefings, whatever the case may be. Short, focused meetings that allow the supervisor and one or more of the operators to get together and talk about how things went, to really focus on improving future performance from that. Next slide, please. Some of the things to think about when you're assessing performance are, what are your standard operating procedures? And part of that isn't just, are they following those, but are your standard operating procedures really up to date to what conditions are today? So it's a kind of a two-way street. What are the position responsibilities? How's training and development going? If it's contracted out, what are the contractual requirements? All of those things are important to consider in assessment. Next slide, please. Then performance monitoring is very important. So sometimes there's monthly or annual performance reports. Dashboards are important that can show what the error rates are, what the total errors might be, and then also by week or by month of those two. And then all of that can provide input to the performance improvement plans and employee development plans. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, all of this feeds back to all of the other areas. So from assessing performance, we can go back and look at, are we identifying the goals and objectives correctly? Have we looked at the correct knowledge, skills, and abilities? Do we have the right staffing? And we can wrap that into each one of those steps in the process. Next slide, please. So this is, I should have gone to the next slide sooner. Anyway, these are, again, a little bit more detail on the steps to focus on the feedback to earlier steps. Next slide, please. So some of the keys, it's important to ensure that this process is important and is done. The overall performance assessment also supports performance-based contracts if you've got one of those. Probably most importantly, it helps to develop staff capabilities. And then it can help with things like overall productivity, to improve workload estimates, and also to facilitate optimal scheduling of staff and support resources. With that, I think that's my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. I appreciate that. That was very insightful. I actually found several items that I can take back and hand it off to some of my operators and the managers as well. Up next, we have Iowa DOT representatives. We have Samir Nezaric and Ashley Hotchberger. Samir is a data analyst at AECOM, and Ashley is the Traffic Management Center and Highway Helper Program Manager at Iowa DOT. They'll be providing an overview of Iowa's DOT practices for managing TMC operator performance. Take it away.
Thank you, Rashad. Next slide, please. So first thing that I want to do is I want to provide everyone with a quick overview of our process. So as you can see by the image in the slide, the process is a constant cycle that is broken down into 3 parts. So we go from our weekly audits to our bi-weekly training, and then to the daily performance of the operator. Then the cycle continues. We audit the performance of the operator, we train the staff on the policies and procedures, target areas of improvement, and then the operator takes all that knowledge and applies it to their next incident that they work. So that is a quick overview of the overall process. Next, we will be taking a deeper dive into each part of the cycle. So the first one we'll talk about is the audit process. The audit process begins by taking a sample of incidents to review from each operator. And for us, we've found that our magic number is a random sample of 10 incidents to review from each operator. So with our 14 operators, that gives us a total of 140 incidents that would need to be reviewed weekly. After the random sample has been determined, the next step is to review each incident and conduct the audit. We do this by looking over the incident from start to finish and then checking to see if everything was done in compliance with the policies and procedures. As we review each incident, we note any possible issues or errors that we see, and then we take those errors, classify them by an error type, and then assign them to the operator that committed the error. And after we finish the review process, you can see on the slide there, we finalize them with our QC team. And our QC team just consists of following people, the program manager, project manager, deputy project manager, the trainer, the analyst, and then the specialist. And then in these meetings, we go over each error and decide if the error was indeed done out of compliance, or maybe it wasn't done out of compliance and it was done correctly. So you can think of this part of the process as auditing the audit, just making sure that the audit was done correctly. And then lastly, when the audit is finalized, we will publish the results and share them with all of the operators. So each operator gets to see their own individual errors as well as the results of their coworkers. And we found that by sharing the results with everyone, the operators get to learn from their own mistakes and from the mistakes of others. So that wraps up the audit process. The next part would be the training process. Thank you. So as we go over the audit, we analyze any trends that we might see, and then the trainer will take that valuable information and develop additional training material and lesson plans and that address and correct any of those issues that were found. The trainer will take each shift as a group away from their workstations, and then we'll hold a training session in our conference room. So this way the operators are in like a classroom setting and they're away from any distractions and they can fully focus on the material that's being discussed. In these sessions, the groups will go over the training material. They will work on group exercises together. They will also have the opportunity to ask any questions or raise any concerns that they might have. And then after the training sessions, the operators will be assigned extra material to work on outside of the training session, and they will have individual quizzes on that material that test their knowledge on the material. And I also wanted to point out that sometimes we hold training sessions that are on topics that don't directly tie into the SOPs, but they will help the operator grow overall in their professional careers. So, for example, we've had training sessions on communication, leadership, standardization, on how to ping an IP address and what that means. And they've even had sessions on retirement and 401ks. And then last thing I want to talk about with training, the biggest thing we want to do is highlight that without a established training program, the cycle doesn't work. So you need to constantly train for every situation and every possible issue. That way, when they encounter it in real life, they can perform the task and achieve success. So a good rule of thumb to remember is that we always want the first time that an operator encounters something new to be in the training environment, not for it to be in real life. Next slide, please. So as we discussed before, in the performance section of the cycle, this is where the operators will take all that information that they've learned from the audits, from the training, and then apply it to their everyday performance, which in result will result in better performance. So in order to track the performance, you need a way to measure it. And as Les has mentioned, you can do that by doing something called an error rate. So that's what we use to measure our performance. We just take the total number of errors and divide that over the total number of incidents. And then you can apply that metric to the overall TMC, like on this graph here, or down to each shift, or even down to each operator. And the reason that we use that error rate as our metric to measure performance is best explained by this example. So let's say you have two operators and those two operators both made 3 errors for that week. And by just looking at the total number of errors, you would say that, okay, both these operators are performing at the same level. They both made 3 errors. But if you take into consideration their total number of incidents worked, you can get a different story. So now let's say that one of the operators did 10 events and the other one had 100 events. And we would say that the operator that worked less events, we would expect them to have less errors since they had less opportunities to make that error, right? Therefore, if they made the same amount of errors as someone that worked more events, then we could say that that person is underperforming when compared to the operator that worked more events. So with this example, we would see that our error rates, that the operator with the lower amount of events would have an error rate of 30%, while the operator with the higher amount of incidents, same number of errors, would have a lower error rate of 3%. And then we've also found that this metric just helps the operator easily visualize the performance. It gives them a value that they can track over time. So you can see by this chart, this chart is showing the overall TMC error rate since we started this back in October of 2022. As you can see, the total number of errors shown by the bar chart has been going down over time, and then the error rate has also been going down over time, shown by the line chart. And then for us, this just shows us that the performance of the TMC is going in the right direction. We're eliminating errors and reducing the error rate. Next slide, please. So we talked about the audit process, the training process, and the way we measure performance. Now I just want to talk about some of the lessons that we have learned. The first lesson that we learned was in order to achieve better performance, we would need to achieve consistency across all the shifts. So when we first started this back in 2022, we could see that for the same task, we'd have a different number of ways that people did it. And we all know that that's not going to work. That's not good. So the way we targeted that is by revalidating all the SOPs and vetting the process at the same time. So what this did is it resulted in us rewriting all of our SOPs, including clear step-by-step directions, and then also streamlining any process that could be streamlined. Another lesson that we learned was if we automate a process, any process, if we can automate it, that would reduce the chance for any operator error. So I got a couple examples. First example is instead of having an operator having to refer to an SOP to figure out what the required message would be for, let's say, a pre-planned detour, we imported an uploader into our ATMS that provided ATMS with the correct message to post for each of those signs for that activation of that pre-planned detour. That way, when the operator had to do that in real life, all they had to do was click a button, it populates all their messages for them. They do a quick review and then send it off. And another example is the way we automated our required phone calls. So our idea was to show the operator in real time that their incident required an additional required notification. Because normally they'd either have it memorized over time and know, okay, with this incident, this requires a call to somebody, or they would have to refer to the SOP and then check to see if their incident meets that criteria. So what we did to streamline that is we just implemented logic into our internal dashboard, which the operators use when they work the incidents. And then in the logic, it populates the required phone call to the operator, and it provides them with the reason on why they need to make that phone call. So it's kind of like they know why the reasons that the phone calls being made. They're not just blindly going, right? And the way we did this is by identifying the specific inputs that the operator would make in our dashboard, and then based on those inputs, we can apply logic around that. And that's how we were able to populate those required phone calls. And last thing is our results from doing this was just a dramatic decrease in errors that were related to required phone calls, which in return increased the performance of the TMC. So that wraps up our process and lessons learned here at the Iowa TMC. Thank you all for your time. I'll go ahead and pass it back to Rashad. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Samir. Up next from Louisiana, we'll have Ryan Revere and Marianne Nichols. Ryan is a traffic incident management engineer at Louisiana DOTD, and Marianne Nichols is a TMC operations manager at Serco. They'll be talking about Louisiana DOTD's practices for managing TMC operator performance.
Thank you, Rashad. So we've actually had some turnaround real recently, myself and Marianne, as far as positions. As of about 10 days ago, I'm in a new position. So I am no longer the traffic incident management engineer for DOTD, but this will be one of my last hurrahs in this pooled fund study. Marianne also used to be our QA QC media liaison for our contract. She's a contractor with Serco, who owns both our MAP, which is our SSP, and our TMC contracts. So she's been recently promoted to our operations manager. So at the end of this, our slide presentation portion, I'll give you the new contact for the person going forward as our traffic incident management engineer. And with that, I'll go ahead and kick it off to Marianne.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marianne Nichols. I am the TMC operations manager, like Ryan spoke. I have been with the TMC since 2015, started as an operator and worked my way up. So we've learned a lot since then. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we really focus hard on training. That is one of the biggest steps for us. We've noticed that if you give somebody the proper training, they'll be able to continue on the job and keep going forward, and it really helps. So with Serco, we implemented a 5-week training course. The first 2 weeks are a classroom-based training course. We have a TMC training binder that has basically all of the information that they would need. We call it their Bible. It has step-by-step the processes of how to create an event in TMS, how our notifications are supposed to be worded, what major impact emails need to go out. We also review our SOP. Operators are required to take the 100, 200, 700, and 800 FEMA course. We also have them take the public safety telecommunicator role and roadway safety course in the Responder Safety Learning Network. I found that this helps them understand the importance of capturing all of the information given to them by our map drivers, so that way they can dispatch additional resources as needed via phone call. We have a LMS, and also in the first 2 weeks of the classroom training, they're building events in our ATMS test system. So they're able to see what's going on, how things are done. We usually watch a live event and have them work through it with us. After the first 2 weeks of classroom, they have a competency test that they have to take. And we just come up with a scenario. It's basically a total closure. We start from beginning to end. And if they're able to do that on their own, then they have passed the first 2 weeks and go into our 3 weeks of shadowing and mentoring. Our shadowing and mentoring 3-week session is, we like to do it 1 week on each shift. So that way they get an understanding of how all the shifts roll. While they're shadowing and mentoring, they're working with either a senior operator or supervisor in our live ATMS system. They also do a 4-hour map ride-along with our map as our SSP program. This gives them a better idea of what's going on, what they're seeing. It's like we're our eyes in the sky, they're on the ground. They can see what our drivers are experiencing and understanding. They do a 4-hour TIM training, and then at the end of that, they do a written competency test, which basically goes over all of the information that they have learned in the past 5 weeks. Next slide. Sorry, training is very, very important. So we always do continuing educational training. Every year, they are doing an annual training, refresher training based on their job role, which is either a TMC operator, TMC senior operator, or TMC supervisor. They do an annual map ride-along. They have to get TIM recertification every 2 years. And we really focus a lot with our after-action review training. So with that, weather events, we had a really big I-55 super fog incident where we met and we got feedback from DOTD and other agencies, and we sat down and broke it down with ways that we could train our operators to be able to understand the severity of events and what to do going forward. Also, the winter event that we had just this past year where the entire state was completely shut down. It was really fun. We met with them so they can understand how, when that stuff happens, what to do to where we don't have to be on our always having to be over them. We're letting them think of things. Ryan, did you want to add on that?
Yeah, so those two events were probably the most notable events in recent times. The super fog, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. Uh, it occurred along I-55, both northbound and southbound, which is between Hammond and New Orleans, alongside Lake Pontchartrain. And we had at the time swamp fires, which was adding visibility issues, which we were lighting up our DMS boards. And at the time, the swamp fire coupled with fog created what they termed super fog, and it basically brought visibility down to almost nothing. And so that incident ended up with about 160 vehicles and 7 fatalities. Excuse me. um, really can't talk too much about it because it's currently under litigation. And then as far as the other storm, what they nicknamed Weather Winter Storm Enzo, I believe, it really, like Marianne said, it taxed our entire system because we have 6 different TMCs as well as 6 different MAP regions. Again, MAP is our SSP. And it really stressed the entire system as a whole on both ends because usually we could surge to one area, but this had covered, again, this is Louisiana, so we're not used to snow. Maybe in the northern parts, but we had record-breaking snows along throughout the southern portion of the state. It was the most snow I've ever seen in my life. So it was a learning experience. We got along, had an after-action review, and went over what went well, what would be possibly could do better going forward. And I think really the biggest issues, especially with the winter weather event or hurricanes or things of that nature, is how do we get those that information to the governor or to any of our stakeholders? Because there's such a turnaround and taking that information and making updates to 511 because things happen so quickly. And those are where we're looking to get better in our processes.
Awesome. Yeah, so we just basically focus really on anything after that, with any type of major incidents or special events. For example, special events whenever the presidential comes to town or the Super Bowl, we really work hard on how can we improve the next time with that, as far as do we need to have more staff on hand to make sure notifications are going out correctly? What do we need to do? How we should surge on that. Next slide. So our performance metrics are listed there. What we do is we take a random event, we pull like the previous, sorry, like Samira said previously, we pull about 10 events a week and just randomly go through them and check them. We pull them from our ATMS report and we look through there and just see, if the operator has followed the performance metrics, which is time to dispatch map is less than 2 minutes. We typically dispatch map immediately. That's always going to be less than 2 minutes, but we're looking at what time, how long after they built the event in the ATMS, did we click on the ATMS that we dispatched our map units to that. Our main focus on that is our response plan. It is an automated response plan, which is great. It helps us get the information out quickly. Whereas one thing that we learned is that when you do something automated, it takes out people's ability to think and, rework things on the fly, which happens sometimes. Not every incident is the same. So you might have to adjust certain messages on certain signs. And a lot of people are just like, oh, well, that's what the response plan said. Well, it's like you have to think about things. So while automating things are great, it does take away from the chance to think and make sure that everything falls on the fly. Next slide. So again, like I said, this is our ATMS. We use our reports there to make sure that they're following the order of operations when building events. So we have to make sure that They are hitting create if it's a reported event, confirmed if it's an actual confirmed event. When they dispatch our map units, when they're on scene, all of those buttons at the bottom, every time they click on it, it adds it to the report, and we use that to verify to see what we need to work with on that. Now, once we've identified that it may be a certain process that a certain operator may have an issue with, we go back into our LMS and we add more training to that. So that way they're able to, see, give them additional steps and resources. The downside of giving a training binder, one thing that we did notice is that whenever the information is updated, it's hard to go back to everybody and say, okay, let's print out a new training binder. So we keep all of our updated information into our LMS system. Everything is digital. They have ways to access it at all times. Next slide. And that's it for me. Ryan?
Okay, just a few additional comments. I know you've mentioned LMS a couple times. I think it's our learning management system. So just
Yes.
FYI, if you were getting lost with the acronym, I know this tends to be a world of acronyms in ITS or in this industry. Also, I think one of the things that I actually would like comments on is how other states are, what other performance metrics are other states using? Because when I first, well, I'm no longer in the role, but when I took over the contract and the role, that was one of the first things that I reviewed was the performance metrics. And some of them, I agree in concept, we have to have performance metrics, but sometimes it's hard to either quantify or get information that we feel is actually usable, that makes sense, even though we can measure it. The other thing is, I'm curious as to how others are not gathering it, but like we use Power BI. That's what we use as our dashboard to display our metrics. So I'm curious how other states are doing that. And then lastly, the contact information you see is Ty Hampton. She is taking over the role as the traffic incident management engineer for Louisiana DOTD. Okay, and that's all. Thank you. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Ryan and Marianne. I actually attended Xavier for my freshman year at college, and it was quite some time ago, but I just can't imagine dealing with snow in Louisiana, just knowing how the climate has been there routinely. I think the last time you guys got snow was like 08, 09 or something like that. So
This was definitely different because it wasn't just snow that was wet and clunky. It actually was powdery snow, which I had never seen in my life.
yeah, I just can't imagine dealing with that, having not dealt with it at all. So great job on that. Great job on the presentation. Next up, we have Rebecca Klein and Scott Nauman. Rebecca is the statewide control room engineer at Wisconsin DOT, and Scott is a TMC operations manager at AECOM. They'll be talking about Wisconsin DOT's practices for managing TMC operator performance.
Thank you, Rashad. First of all, I'd like to introduce Scott Norman, just as what Rashad was saying. He is the TMC operations manager for AECOM on site at WIS.TMC. Our TMC is 24/7, 365 and statewide. We have 3 shifts, 6 a.m., 2 p.m., and 10 p.m. AECOM is contracted to provide control room staffing, which includes 18 full-time employees, 9 operators, 3 shift supervisors, 3 specialists, 2 are for the flex lane, and then we have 1 QA/QC specialist. Then we also have 1 lead operator and trainer, 1 assistant manager, which is a new position, and then 1 operations manager, which is Scott. AECOM has been our partner in the TMC for over 10 years. Back to you, Scott.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, thanks, Rebecca, and thanks for the opportunity to really present today. So we can click forward 1 slide, please. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about managing operator performance through our audit program, which I'll walk through and talk a little bit more about in the next few slides. So training is a big part of our operator performance process, and I know it's been definitely a theme that's been talked about on this call quite a bit as well. So kind of show off how this tool really helps us to support overall staff training. Really the primary function or primary purpose of our audit program and process is to ensure quality, accuracy, consistency, and of course, continuous improvement. So right now we're in about the third version of our audit program. So this kind of all started out around 2016. Our first version of our audit program was a Microsoft Access database. You can kind of see that screenshot on the lower right-hand corner of your screen, which worked well for us. However, there were some challenges with keeping that updated as we wanted to look at new metrics and new processes, customizing that to be able to provide us, valuable reporting. Prior to 2016, we were still performing audits, but it was more paper document based. So really kind of moving that into the digital era, right? Second version of it got rid of Microsoft Access in place of Microsoft Excel. Focused a lot on the processes and the different steps that our operators are taking during an incident. That was also linked to a Power BI dashboard or Power BI report. The third version and our current version, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we go through these couple slides, is still Microsoft Excel based. And the one thing that we looked at adding was not only looking at the steps that the operators are taking, but also getting an idea of how long it's taking them to enter in information or get information sent out to the public. Now, with that being said, we certainly still want to ensure quality, and that's a lot more important than timeliness. But it does help give us an idea of how long it's taking for different incident types to get TMS events put out or put in, email notifications sent out, things like that. So as we were going through and kind of getting towards version 3 of our audit program, we created a number of test events, some of those lower impact, lower severity up to the highest. And we shared those among new staff that have been here for a while, and some of our more senior staff, and kind of got some ideas of timeframes and kind of built an average out of that. So again, really the focus is still on quality, but it does help us to get an idea, right? We want to make sure that if we got called about a serious event and it took a half hour to get entered into our TMS system, we want to kind of find out why that was happening. So the audits are conducted by our quality specialists, like Rebecca mentioned. That's a newer position that we have over the past couple of years, and our shift supervisors. So we do have those 3 shift supervisors. Our quality specialist primarily focuses on focuses on the after the fact audits. And our supervisors are looking at real-time audits. So as an event is taking place, they're going through and making sure that all the steps have been completed and are accurate. We're looking at doing about 10 audits per week by our quality specialist, and then 3 from our shift supervisors. And of course, it's staffing and workload dependent. And then ensuring that each team member gets audited during the course of a month. So we can click forward one slide, please. So this is what the current version of our audit form looks like. You can just see there, I'm not going to go through every category, but the top part is general information. Each audit is assigned a unique audit number. And the top part also has general information just on the location of the incident, who's auditing it, which operator handled the incident, etc. We move down to things like the TMS event, DMS, or portable changeable message sign messaging, an API response for text that goes out to the public via 511 and other resources or other sources. One area I want to kind of focus on, if we can click forward one more. This is our total score field. So you can see that each category that we're looking at or that we're auditing has an individual score or subscore associated with it. If there's a section that maybe doesn't apply for the specific incident, in this case, DMS messaging, that's not included, and that doesn't reflect on the total score. Scoring is color coded as well, so it makes it easy to see what areas we did really well, what areas potentially could need improvement. And if we click forward one more. The other thing that I wanted to highlight too is that each of the sections and categories, we have the ability to adjust the weighting of that score. And that goes from 1 being the highest to 5 being the lowest. Because there's, we've noticed that there's situations where maybe one action was more important given a certain incident than, let's say, another action. So our auditors and supervisors can go through and make those adjustments. However, we do have default weighting set up on that audit form, just as standard levels. We can click through to the next one, please. And this just shows the second page of that audit form with some of the additional categories that we're looking at. We do have a comments and notes section at the bottom, which allows our auditors to provide additional information, additional context about the incident. Maybe we were working a winter snowstorm and things were really busy, which is why it took a little bit longer to either get an event put in or email notification sent out. We also use that section to outline any follow-up steps that we've had either with the operator that handled it or the shift supervisor. Next slide, please. So this is page 1. I mentioned we have a Power BI audit dashboard. This is page 1 of that. And this just shows overall scores. You can see the average on the top left-hand corner there of our total audit scores over any particular date range. We have breakdowns by each shift. We're looking at audited events by type. Right now, we're primarily focusing on incidents. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a future slide. You can see the number of audits that were performed by the auditor and also how many audits were completed on individual staff on the lower left-hand side of the screen. And again, this gives us the ability to filter down by specific shifts. We can even look at specific operators and the dashboard will update appropriately. This is just what the second page of that looks like. So this gets more into the individual categories. You can kind of see on the upper middle side of the screen, we can select between API response, ATMS events, cross-shift data transfer, DMS usage, etc. Again, giving us a breakdown by month, by shift. And then at the very bottom, you can see averages for that individual category. So again, we can kind of click through these and select different areas and see what our scores are looking like either on an individual shift or individual operator basis. And this is the final page of the actual audit dashboard. And this gets us down a little bit further. It drills us down a little further. When we're looking at the individual categories, let's say DMS usage on the lower left there, you can see the individual questions and what the scoring looks like for that particular time period. So again, this gives us a nice view that we can look at to see what areas we're doing well on, what areas we maybe want to focus on for training, for improvement under each of those individual categories. So audit results, what are we doing with the audit results? So again, the big focus of that is training, making sure that everybody is performing at a high level, that we're providing them the tools and resources that they need to be able to do their job and do it successfully. Right now, our audit results are shared primarily internal to management. So our quality specialist has monthly meetings that include Rebecca, our statewide control room engineer, myself, and generally some others on the team. We look at how many audits were completed over the past month, kind of higher level, what scores we're seeing, what's going really well, what areas maybe need to be improved upon. After that, quality specialist meets with the individual shift supervisors to kind of provide them an overview and a report on how their shift was doing. Same thing, anything that's going really well, any areas that we want to focus on for improvement. The shift supervisors are working with their team to get those implemented. And we're keeping an eye on those to make sure that, we're seeing improvements in those areas. And of course, again, sharing what went well. We have a monthly program meeting. It's actually coming up tomorrow for us. So we share kind of the trends that we're seeing with our audits through those meetings to help get people up to date and see what we need to focus on. We do have an annual operator certification and recertification process. So that's a good opportunity for us to take any of the findings that we're seeing from the audits and tie those into questions or scenarios that we can present during our recertification process. Really identifying gaps in SOPs. This has been a big one for us. there's things that are kind of unwritten procedures, that folks on our team know about, but aren't necessarily documented. So we can get those updated in our SOPs. Are there any new procedures that we need to identify things? Are there low scores that we're seeing? And when we talk to staff, they weren't aware of how they should be doing it, or if they're supposed to be doing it a certain way. We can get those new SOPs written and turned around pretty quick. And then, of course, identifying just additional training needs or gaps, whether it's just in our entire training process or like we talked about the SOPs, et cetera. So yeah, that's really helped us a lot. Just continuing to improve, continuing to train, continuing to do better, a little bit better each day is kind of what we always talk about here. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so just looking at kind of next steps and future enhancements. One of the nice things that we would be looking at doing is potentially integrating that audit form into our ATMS. Right now, the supervisors and the quality specialists are using our ATMS reports primarily to look up the information and populate that Excel spreadsheet. Definitely automation would be a nice future enhancement. AI is certainly a hot topic right now. So looking at how AI could be used to either help kind of parse through those audit results and look for trends, or even, help to populate and add to some of that automation. That audit report that we just talked about in Power BI, looking to transition that over to Tableau. Tableau is better supported among our team here. So we're looking at making that transition happen. Looking at auditing additional types of events, right? So I mentioned that primarily most of our audits that we're doing are on incidents. We have the ability to do, special events, planned events. We have our dynamic part-time shoulder, our flex lane. We'd like to start auditing that. Some of our missing persons alerts that we do, those amber and silver alerts, doing some auditing for those. Again, dashboard, getting that information real time, getting that presented, out to folks, start sharing that a little bit more, see how we're doing on a real time basis. And then every year we put together a annual report for our TMC. It'd be really great to start getting that information into the annual report, whether it's, those accuracy numbers or even tying in some of those times that we're looking at where we could say, 95% of the time, et cetera, 98% of the time we had DMS boards activated within the first, 3 minutes or whatever of an incident, whatever the case may be. So those are definitely handy and useful information that we'd like to get out into that report as well. So with that, that's all I had. Turn it over to Sean.
Thank you very much. All of those presentations were excellent. Right now, we're going to open it up to Q&A. If any questions weren't posed during these presentations, some were answered. Hopefully, all of them were answered, I believe. If you have any other questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A pod, and we'll look to get some answers for you. Any questions like any tools or methods that weren't mentioned in any of these, or management's perception? It's not in the Q&A pod, but I think we have a question from Brian. And Brian, is this to anyone in particular, or is it to all the presenters? Okay, to anyone. If anyone would like to answer this question, do you incorporate customer service or stakeholder feedback in TMC performance measurement? I believe Rebecca is typing an answer. Not sure if it's to Brian's question or Johan's question. Johan is a separate question in the Q&A box. Brian, I'm just trying to get yours responded to.
So Rashad, I'll give my opinion actually both of those questions. As far as I'll start with the recruiting. I don't know if recruiting is as big of the problem, and Marianne, you can jump in if you want, but it's more so the retention. We've been having issues retaining employees. In fact, that's one of the things that we're trying to work on to prevent them from jumping on to other, I guess, ventures. And we've got a few ideas. I don't know, Marianne, I don't know if you want to go into that or not, but staff retention has been one of the biggest issues, because that when you don't retain staff, then you don't develop staff, and then those error rates that we're talking about tend to compound. And before I get to the next one, Marianne, if you want to chime in.
Yes. So, what we've noticed is that it's not necessarily the recruiting, it's just everybody coming in. Not everyone fully understands what the TMC is or what they do. So when we get people coming in, they're just thinking like, oh, it's just a general job. And then when they realize everything that they have to do, they're just kind of like, this is not, um, for me or whatever. I'm curious to know if there was ever a plan to do like a national certification for the TMCs. That way, everyone understands, like it's a way to get everybody out there understanding like, oh, okay, this is a national thing. So if you're certified in a TMC, you can go anywhere with it. That would be really great. Preferred educational background. We don't limit it to like degrees or whatever, as long as you have a high school diploma or GED. I had no knowledge in TMC at all when I started. I didn't even know my directions on the interstate. And then I just kind of like, I mean, I've had different jobs throughout my life, but I'm obsessed with TMC stuff now. It's like all I talk about, and I try to recruit people. But it's just basically getting the knowledge out of what your TMC does. And we are working on that with all of our other stakeholders and our DOTD customer service, hopefully to get them to kind of do like a little, media blurb on what the TMC is and what we do and how people can apply and go from there.
So, Rashad, the other question from Brian concerning the incorporating customer service or stakeholder feedback in TMC performance measurement. I don't know if it's actually directly one of our performance metrics, but I know fairly recently, and again, this goes back to the issue with the turnover issue that we've had recently. I went to what I deemed as our internal customers, our PIO, our maintenance contract, as well as just the districts, et cetera, and really solicited feedback. And from that, try to use in our monthly TMC meetings that we hold. That was the basis for discussion. Say, hey, what are we doing with this? I'm hearing this. I'm hearing that. How can we go forward? What type of training is needed to get better?
Piggyback on what Marianne was saying, I was a mechanic before I came into TMC operations. I had no idea what I didn't know who put up the signs. Like I knew nothing about this center. So in our recruiting, we're no longer contracted. We're actually all my operators now state, but when they were contracted, and also on our applications now for state positions, we also don't require anything. Like she said, high school diploma, a valid driver's license though, because it is emergency operations, and they need to be able to get to these centers when they're needed. But no prior experience is needed for us as well. Just to piggyback off of that. Thank you, Brian and Marianne. Thank you for Rebecca for responding in the pod as well. We do have a few questions that she has responded to as well. Performance measures used to adjust payout or bonuses was posed by an anonymous attendee. Rebecca then responded for WisDOT, that's completely dependent on AECOM, and Marianne responded for Louisiana, that is determined by CERCO. They use the performance metrics to determine raises. We have another open question by an anonymous attendee in the Q&A pod. Have the performance efforts resulted in incentivizing operators Actually, it looks like it got answered. Thank you, Rebecca, for responding as well. Have the performance efforts resulted in incentivizing operators to take on ownership of system performance? In other words, not only do performing actions, but looking at it as managing the system to improve safety and mobility for the public and freight. And Rebecca responded, not yet, as our current focus is on providing quality and current information to the public. Our operators are constantly working with our ATMS provider to ensure quality operations of our ATMS. John has posed several questions in the chat, not the Q&A pod. Did I miss his first one? Well, I see. Have any of the states run into issues with staff having the performance monitoring and reporting with agency staff, or are the practices only applicable to the contractors providing these services? If anyone wants to jump in and handle that one, that'd be great. If not, I can't speak on contractors for Maryland because, again, we're all state now. I don't have a contractor. But as far as performance monitoring, I did create a position that handles that. He's my training and certification manager. I have two operations managers. One oversees the statewide operations center. One oversees all of my TOCs, which are the traffic operations centers that are located in our state police barracks across the state. But all of that is being put on the shoulders of my new training and certification manager. We have one open in the pod. Do any other speakers, states have a thought on the managing the system question? I'm not sure which question that is on the managing the system question. Again, if no one else wants to jump in there, I can speak for Maryland. I, myself, and my new training and certification manager speak directly with, we have a proprietary system. Our ATMS was created and is managed in-house and in conjunction with University of Maryland. Their CAT lab is very helpful with that and developing that. So we have meetings every Tuesday, and if anything's brought to myself or my training and certification manager or any one of my managers, they bring it to me or him, and we speak directly with our systems engineers and the person that handles our ATMS personally. Again, in the chat, please try to keep your questions in the Q&A pod. It is a little bit more helpful to keep track of. We have, which is the preferred educational background? I think we touched on that one. We have, in Florida, we have developed an automated software that tracks events that are assigned to operators and the time frame it takes for the operator to move it along to the next phase in the event recording. The software also reminds the operator that an event is waiting to move along to the next phase when it is lingering. TMC management runs reports daily to review how many events were handled by each operator and how each operator was graded. This software was aimed at grading, but also reminding the operators during the course of an event. Is anyone else using this type of automated software? I'd like for anyone to jump in there. That'd be great. I'm not sure that many states are using very automated software there. I think North Carolina might have touched on some a little bit. In Maryland, I'm trying to get our proprietary system to a more automated system. We have made leaps and bounds in that everything is contained in one unit. I've seen a lot of other TMCs have several sections of their ATMS and they have to work in conjunction. But I have not seen anybody else doing that like as Florida proposed. Rebecca stated that Wisconsin does not use an automated software that tracks events, which goes along with what my observation has been. I haven't seen a whole lot of other states doing that.
Hey, Rashad, I have a question. I was just curious if any of the other states are using AI in their detection for events. I know that's something we've had companies contact us concerning, but I'm just curious if any of the other states are actually doing it and how they're finding it working.
Great question, Ryan.
Hi, Ryan. This is Rebecca from Wisconsin. We're just starting now to look into AI for automatic incident detection. There was a kickoff meeting this past Monday, but unfortunately I had to attend the pre-meeting to this. But I think we are going to be implementing it on, or, just for experimental at the time, I think like 20 or 25 different sites. So I can provide some details in the future, but I don't have any information at this time otherwise.
Sure, if you can, definitely get that to Marianne or Ty.
Sure, once I know something, or once we kind of have it more deployed and checking in the field, yep, I can provide that information.
Joseph did respond. They're using AID software, automated incident detection software in Florida, and it's being used in several other states. Here in Maryland, we don't have it implemented yet. We are still building it out in some of our ITS devices along a certain section of 695, which encompasses Baltimore, the Baltimore region. There's a section of that, which includes, in 2022, there was an incident that was probably almost all the TMSs understand happened with 6 workers in a work zone. But that is our section that includes the new devices that will implement AI and automated incident detection software. They're in that zone that should be going live next year. We'll see if that happens, because the time frame keeps getting pushed back. But yeah, we are planning on that. An anonymous attendee: is there any career path for operators for those who may want to stay? I can speak on that. At Maryland, we have 7 different levels. Our operators are called highway operations technicians by title. You start off as a hot 1, and after a certain amount of time, you can then test up to highway operator 2. We also have highway operations technician 3, which is a team leader. Then the 4th level is a supervisor. And like I said, I as a contractor, I started in 2014 as a highway operations technician 1. I have moved up to supervisor by 2018, manager by 2020, and division chief by 2022. So in Maryland, there's tons of mobility here.
In Wisconsin, we have been, since I've been here, we have been trying to provide different opportunities for our control room operators to promote. I'm going to call it like the lowest levels is going to be the control room operator. Then we've got a lead operator that is also a trainer. Then above the trainer is going to be a QA QC specialist and or a flex lane specialist. And then on top of that, you've got the ship supervisor. And then we just created a new position for assistant manager, which one of the ship supervisors took. So now we've got a ship supervisor position open. So we are trying to make sure that our control room operators have the opportunity to advance when we do have openings.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Any other questions want to be posed in the Q&A pod? Take a couple more minutes for that. Otherwise, there are various places that you can reach out to people. I believe any of these presenters, along with myself, you have our email addresses, and you can reach out if you have any questions that follow up once we conclude this session. It's looking like we might be all questioned out. If there are no more questions, I believe we can move on. Thank you very much. Here we have our completed work products from the pool fund study. Things such as managing TMS assets, assessing and reporting on TMS capabilities and performance, predictive analytics. These are all recently completed projects that you can find on the Pool Fund Study website. That address is found below. Thank you, Kyla, for putting that in the chat. All of those reports will be on the completed projects page, as she just put it in the chat there. And it is at the bottom of your screen as well. Our upcoming webinars in this series, again, be on the lookout for these announcements at the NOCO on the NOCO website, and for our upcoming NOCO webinars. If you are interested in being a speaker or moderator or host in an upcoming webinar, please contact John Obenberger. Again, he is our liaison at FHWA for the Pool Fund Study. These are upcoming topics, again, that we'll be touching on moving forward. You can reach out to John Obenberger or Kathy Thompson. They've both been very beneficial in handling these. We can move forward, please. Again, that is the NOCO website. You can find ideas, you can submit ideas, research topics, our TMS portal, as well as plenty of other information that you'll find on the NOCO website under that page. And Kayla, I think we can go to the closing poll.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Rashad. I'm going to put a poll question in here, just asking for any thoughts on future webinars. Okay, share this one. Okay. So just if there's any information, resources, or research conducted that you'd like to see that are not currently available in that TMS portal, you can share some information there. And then if there's any additional TMS emerging topics that you would like to see, just always great to get information collected from everyone who attends these webinars. So we'll just leave that open for a minute or so, and then we'll just wrap up. But I do want to say, thanks so much to Rashad for moderating, and for our panelists, Les Jacobson, Samir Nazarvik, Ryan Revere, Marianne Nichols, Rebecca Klein, and Scott Nauman. Those were really informative presentations, so just really appreciate everyone's attendance and participation today. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, a recorded version of the webinar will be available on the NOCO website probably in the next week or so. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, just thanks so much for participating today, and stay tuned for future webinars. So I'll leave this poll open. I think we're wrapping up here. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. All the presentations were great. Plenty of questions.